Okay, thank you everyone for being here. I'm not used to holding a mic, but as Erica just mentioned, I am a UX designer. I've been practicing UX for the past 10 years or so. Before UX was really called UX, it's kind of developed from different methodologies, from information systems to information architecture to UX to strategy. So here we are today. But before I get started today with the actual session, I just want to try to get to know what type of people are in the crowd here today. So are you guys here, is anyone here a UX designer themselves? Does anyone here practice UX? Has anyone here heard of UX before? Yeah, okay, good. Glad to see that people have actually heard of it. Are you guys, is anyone here working on a startup idea? And has your startups, are they actually in motion? Anyone's startup is actually, okay, great, okay. And are the startups tech startups? Yeah, okay. All right, good. So I think what we'll be talking a little bit about today is there's a lot of actually UX models and methodologies out there that you can sort of apply to your startup ideas, or to even if it's a product or service business that you're trying to work through. UX comes from the idea of really just trying to understand users. It's all centered around the people that we are building for and the people that we are developing our ideas for. And of course, that can then always come back to your own business goals and objectives and how you can then return on investment for yourselves for whatever value proposition your business actually aims to gain. So just a little bit of background again on myself. I do work in digital strategy. I have my own communications consultancy that I started 5 years ago here in the UAE that focuses on communication strategy, and I head up the digital side of it. So if you guys have any questions throughout on that, please feel free to come see me. And then actually, the way I like to give a lot of my sessions is to have them a little bit more interactive. So I really don't mind throughout the session if you guys want to stop, give your own ideas, give examples, talk about your own businesses and how we can sort of apply some of these methodologies to it. I really think a lot of the time doing that can help us learn from each other's problems and how you're solving them yourselves. So UAE Innovation Week going on this week. As we heard, over 900 activities are happening throughout the city, which is amazing. And the conversations that are happening are all going to be around, I guess, innovation, right? So innovation will mean different things to different people. And I wanted just to touch a bit about that initially. What we're going to be hearing a lot about is like the different products that are being built, the applications as services that we hear like the government of Dubai really pushing through to make sure that this is a very smart city, that this is a sustainable city, and that it's a happy city. Why? Because people are becoming happy from these innovative services and products that they're developing. But with that, as a UX person, I tend to feel a little bit edgy on that. It could be really exciting because we're creating these awesome products and awesome innovative ideas that's coming out there. But if they're not executed right, and if they're not executed around the way we actually expect these products and services to be developed, that actually return, that actually solve the needs as users that we have, then they're just another pretty little picture out there. So as a UX person, this is kind of what I want to touch upon today when we think about innovation. Now, also when we think about innovation, we think about two types. There is sustaining innovation that is looking at traditional business models that are currently running and how you can sort of innovate those models to make them a little bit better. And then there's a lot of talk around disruptive innovation. And those are innovations that are actually really cool, that are coming in and changing the way that traditional business models would operate within a marketplace. So, and we're thinking about sustaining innovation, and this chart comes from the Lean Entrepreneur book by B. Cooper. What it is, it's thinking about problems that are already understood in our day-to-day. So things that we already go through in a marketplace that we already are accustomed to. The innovation looks at improvements, so making things easier for something that we already are using and that we already are, that already makes sense to us. So the customer that we would think, the persona that we would envision for that type of business, as a sustained innovative business, exists. It's not something that I need to prove to you that, oh, this need is there and this customer is actually there. So it's really focused on traditional business models and methods, and that's great. And we actually see a lot of that happening here in the UAE and in the region itself, that we're looking at how we can take the traditional type of models and just make them a bit better. But then what's really interesting is the disruptive innovation. And the disruptive innovation is what we're hearing all about throughout the world, actually, and these sort of models that are disrupting traditional marketplaces and then actually coming into the way we interact with them. And these are problems that are well not understood. And customers that, do they actually exist or do they not actually exist? Is it a new market? Are they there or are they not there? And then does the customer even know that they would be a customer of this disruptive innovation that someone is coming up with? And that marketplace tends to be a bit unpredictable. So the risk factor is a bit higher, but then the rewards are also much higher too. So with greater risk comes greater reward. Does anyone have any disruptive innovative businesses out there that they see happening around the region? I mean, the traditional, one of the ones that I'm sure we keep talking about and hearing about is, for example, Uber, who's come in and disrupted the taxi and industry itself. So that is something that has just sort of totally changed. And who would have thought that people would be actually using their apps to order their own drivers, but not only that, be able to make payments directly through cards, so you don't even need to carry cash with you anymore. This is an industry that's really gone in and disrupted that whole market, and we've seen the backlash in other countries around the world. Like, for example, in London 2 years ago, when Uber had first taken a huge stand in the marketplace there, and the taxi drivers and the cab drivers actually protested against them, which in turn made people actually more aware of Uber and actually raised Uber's presence within their region. So that's an example of a disruptive innovation. Another one that we've all experienced as well was the iPod when it first came out. It changed the way the music business worked. So it was no more about, not only did it change the way we consume music from the CDs or the computers, but now, on-the-go music, the MP3s are type of music that you'd be developing, but also it changed the way that musicians had to think about their business model. So it's taking a traditional business model and totally changing it, or even killing it and it doesn't exist anymore, to creating something that is totally new and refreshing. And actually, if you think about iPods now, when Apple first came up with that, we're seeing them less and less these days too. And that's an example of how a disruptive product can then eventually become one that's just becoming sustained as well. So they'll be moving around. And I'm going to be talking to you guys a little bit more about this in terms of when you think of your own businesses and how to think about features that you would want to apply to your own products and services that would make sense and would change over time too. But first of all, I just want to talk a little bit more, plug a little bit more about user experience, UX, aka user experience. UX it's not just a model, and it's not design, it's not pretty pictures, it's really a mindset. It's a way of thinking, it's a way of application to any sort of business idea or product design or service design or customer experience. UX is a mindset that needs to be put in place where we center everything that we do around the users. And it's all about delivering value at the end of the day. How can what we do and what we're trying to develop will come back and deliver value to those users or to those customer segments that we're aiming for. So it focuses on the customer, and we'll continuously say this and bring it up a little bit more, because no matter how much people believe that they're thinking about the customer when they go to design and develop a product, are they really actually applying UX methodology and actually customer service methodology to really understand their customers and what their needs are and who they are and what their personas are? UX is all about that. It's front and center in everything that we do. And it then helps us inspire the right ideas. A lot of the time, especially in startups, when we're trying to think of these next cool products and services that we come up, we think we know the users, and we think we know what they want. We think we know how to deliver value back to them based on what we believe to be true. And that's great that you have that passion for what you believe to be true, but then you need to ensure that it is delivering value back to your users. And that in itself, if you do start going through those exercises, which we'll talk about, you'll start to understand how to bring in the right ideas into the products and services that you're building. And then that will help guide decisions for you guys to know which features you should be using and which you shouldn't. And really, one of the best ways to think about this, there is, well, before to get into that, what we're trying to do is we're trying to create great products, right, or services. But we want to make great products that people will use. And that means they need to add value back to people's lives. Similarly, if we're trying to offer great service, we want to offer great service that people need. And that means we're adding value back to people's lives. And the words that you kept hearing right now in these past two slides is that we're talking about people. And again, it's going back again, and I'll be mentioning this throughout today, and you'll think, oh, she's talking too much about people and customers, but that's central to UX. It is about people, but it's also about happy people. How can what we do, make the users and the customer segments that we are focusing on happy with what we do? Happy, and how is someone happy? Happy is because we're helping them, we're bringing them, helping them reach a value into the products and services that they're using. They're valuing it, it's changing, changing a behavior, making them feel that what we're designing is designed for them, even without them realizing it. A lot of the time what we're doing is making them unconsciously happy. We don't want them to think, oh, that's, you know, and we'll talk about that now, but a lot of the time it's just reaching out basic needs of happiness for the people that we're designing for. So the first thing that we need to know is how do we meet our customer needs? And how do we meet them? You need to know their needs. Are you solving an issue? Is your product solving an issue that they're dealing with? Is it a problem that they have on a regular basis that you're trying to fix? Are you realizing an opportunity? Is it something that they don't know exists there, but you know that could be something that would solve a problem that they didn't even know existed? Or are you satisfying a need that currently exists that people are demanding and asking for, but nobody's really out there trying to get it? And then once you think about your business model and the build of your business model, one of the main aspects of your business model is your customer segments, of course. But each customer segment is a bit different, and each customer segment has its own value propositions that you need to come back to and ensure that you're reaching that value proposition for each one of those customer segments. So know that not all needs are equal. When you segment out your customer base, you need to understand that people have different priorities and people have different meanings to these priorities and different feelings against them as well. So something that would be really important for a family that's traveling when they enter the airport is a bit different than potentially someone who's on a business trip traveling alone. So their needs and their priorities are different. So when we're thinking of service design within an airport base, that's going to be a lot different based on the different customer segments. But knowing who they are, knowing what their needs are, knowing the different issues that they go through, and what opportunities can be realized there will help different airports reach different values back to their users. And that's just an example, but I'll probably talk you through the airport example a little bit more, because living here in Dubai, this is something that we've all experienced, of course, coming in and out of the country. So I want to talk to you about the Kano model. Has anyone here heard of the Kano model before? Okay, this is really cool model that's been developed by Noriaki Kano, a Japanese professor in 1984. And what he wanted to do in terms of product development is he wanted to categorize and prioritize customer needs. And this would then help them guide product development and enhance customer satisfaction. And we all know the Japanese know what they know a lot about customer satisfaction, and especially when it comes to innovative product development. So what the Kano model says is that there's 3 axes on this model. Sorry, there's 2 axes on this model, and there's 3 different elements towards it. The axes that we see here is satisfaction and dissatisfaction. The more satisfied you are is the more delighted you are with the product and service that you're using, and then obviously as you go down, you get your it's more of a dissatisfaction. And then you have the requirements. Have you fulfilled requirements of your users? Have you unfulfilled them? So it goes against these 2 areas, and I'll just talk you through that now. What this model says is that if you're thinking of a product or service that you're building, there will be needs of your customers that are basic. And that's what the red one is here. There's basic needs that must be there. And if they're not there, your customers will be pissed off. But if they are there, they won't even notice. And I'll talk you through some examples about that. Then we have the performance satisfiers, and that's the additional features that you add. The more that you do, and the better they are, the greater satisfaction that you'll bring back to your customers. And the less that you do, and the worse off that they are, the less satisfaction. And then we have the delighters, and those are the je ne sais quoi that you would bring into your product or service. A thing that people can't really put a name to it, but when you do it, they love it. You've delighted them, you've given them an experience that they didn't even expect, and that's what raises the bar and brings you and your product and service to another level. So I'll talk you through all these different steps, because it's really important to, if you are thinking about how to differentiate yourself in a market, how to develop and design a product or service that will actually maybe either disrupt the market, or really, if it's in a red ocean type of market, it will be able to compete a lot better. So I want to start off by talking a bit about the performance satisfier. So that's the blue line here that you see going through. Performance satisfiers are all about features. And then you see this with a lot of products and services that are out there. So for example, think of software. Every time a software would come out, there would be versions of it, and every version will have more and more features for you to consider when you're thinking about one software over another. So businesses are all about adding more and more features out there, because they think that's a great way to convince you to want to purchase that software. But if we think about it from a different type of perspective, let's think about a service that we've all probably experienced, like a hotel booking, or sorry, a hotel check-in. You go in to check into a hotel, and if you check into your hotel and it takes you about 10 minutes to check into that hotel, your performance satisfier may end up down here a little bit. You know, you're going in, you know you have to check in. It's a feature that is given through every different hotel, but if it's done and it takes a lot of time, it'll be sort of dissatisfactory. But let's say it's in the middle, and you've been able to check in within 3 minutes time, then you're quite neutral, and you might hit the spot right over here. But if you go in and you're able to check in within 30 seconds, and you're in your room within 30 seconds, in and out, your performance satisfier is way up here. And that sort of is what differentiates your features. Yes, you can have many of them, but how well do you provide those features back to your users? And so the better your features are, in terms of when you compare it against your competitors, the higher the satisfactory rate goes. It goes there, but then again, they're not what we think about with the must-be's, and that's the basic ones. But what I want to get on here is that if you are thinking of adding more and more features to your products because you need to in order to differentiate yourself or in order to compete within your market, you need to realize that adding a lot of features also adds a lot of complexity to what you're designing too. So this is what the Kano model talks about in terms of performance, but when I bring UX back to the Kano model, I think about how much more complexity am I adding to the user's journey and experience with my product or service. Because the more complexity we add, the decrease in user experience will occur. So not all features need to be there. Most features are not even being used. So one of the things to think about is which features are actually really helping us do satisfactory. So the features that you're providing that are up here that you really want to focus on, and the ones that you do offer but maybe you're not doing so great, maybe not highlight them or work on them and make them more satisfactory before you actually bring them into your product or service that you're trying to take to market. So UX strategy says for performance payoff to carefully curate the features that match the experience vision. So when you are thinking about the UX experience throughout, think of the vision of that journey that you're trying to build. We heard a little bit about that in the previous talk about the customer journey and how that sort of needs to work through. What's the vision of the user experience that you want to occur? Now, of course, everyone's going to say, oh, it has to be a great user experience. Who's not going to say that? But what does great mean? Right? And then that's what we go into a little bit more detail about understanding our users and our needs and what they need to get out of a journey in order for them to have that good experience. So is their experience, yes, I need to be able to check in and get into my room right away because I have a business meeting and I don't want to be bothered? Or is the experience of them entering the hotel as they want it to take time, and they want the tours around the hotel, and they want someone to come and sit with them and give them a drink, etc. So again, experience is different for different customer segments because of their different needs, because of and also the different business that you're trying to provide back. The other thing that we say, what UX strategy says under the performance payoff, is that we need to look at how we can remove complex features. If features are extremely complex, either we find ways to uncomplex them, so find ways to make them easier for users to use, or we remove them completely, unless they're actually quite vital to the business, to the product that you're trying to build. And just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because the feature is there and it's, oh, it looks great and we have it and we've done it, doesn't mean it should be out there. Again, because that can just, it can even take away from what you're doing and take away from your value proposition back to your users. The other element on this chart is the basic expectations. So basic expectations are difficult to meet, but absolutely necessary. You can never delight people by meeting basic expectations. Best you can do, satisfy them, but you can completely mess it up if it's not there. So what's an example of a basic expectation? When you walk into your hotel room, let's say you've checked into a hotel and you walk into your hotel room. What's a basic expectation? Cleanliness. Cleanliness, right? You walk in there, it should be clean. And if it's not clean, you're going to be angry. And if it is clean, you're not even going to notice, right? Anything else? How about walking into your hotel room and then taking a look at the right, and then there's another door there, and that door leads to a bathroom that provides a bathtub, that provides a shower, that provides a sink. Is that amazing? No, but if it's not there, then what are you doing? This is not where you want to be, right? So this is what we're talking about in terms of basic expectations. Let's take it back 60, 70 years. If your great-grandparents were walking into an inn, into a hotel inn, and they didn't have a bathroom in their room that they're renting, would they be mad about that? No, because a lot of the hotels and the inns back then didn't have bathrooms as part of their offering, and it was okay. It was expected that we would have a shared bathroom that we would be using. So that's just an example of expectations also changing over time, which we'll get into in a little bit. But in terms of knowing what are the must-be's, what has to be there in order for us to ensure that we just keep things stable. Whatever we do here is not going to make us more competitive. It's not going to give us a competitive advantage. But if we don't do it, we're out of the market. It's just not going to work. And so these are actually vital to understand when we are going through our features list. Ask yourself what has to be there, and then if it's not there. If it's not creating great experiences, that's okay, but it still needs to be there. And then a lot of the time, by the way, what ends up happening is people within the business end up putting things that are here into here and say, no, if it's not there, it's just not going to work. And so that's when, of course, you need to take it back to your customers and do a lot more testing and talking to them to really understand where features should end up. So what does a UX strategy say about basic expectations? You need to, like I just mentioned, you need to be on the lookout for failed and missing expectations. Missing a basic expectation can cause extreme frustration, as we just mentioned, and lots of mixed expectations opens a door for competitors. So if it's something that you're missing and you don't have it and your competitor does, it can just knock you out of the park. And finally, the one that we want to hear about, and the one that was in the red line there, is the excitement generators, or what Kano called them, the delighters. What are those items that make us so happy, that delight us, that really will help differentiate us from our competitors and give us a competitive advantage? And this is where it's quite difficult for a lot of businesses to get. Businesses are so focused on those performance payoffs and adding more features that are just, just okay and just in the market. What are those things that can take that customer experience and take it to another level? And they always tend to be things that customers don't expect. So you give it to them. If you give it to them, they'll be extremely happy with you. But if you don't give it to them, it's okay. They're not going to say that you're not performing, or the product's not great, or the service is not great, because they don't even expect it. So when you do offer these great delighters that can really make a customer feel that you know them and that you care about them, that can really help give you that advantage. So what is it that you do? So you make the customer journey delightful at all. One of the things to think about in terms of how these excitement generators work is trying to make sure that you can try to hit it throughout the customer journey in one way or another. And a lot of the time, this is solved by really good customer service, which a lot of organizations have problems actually offering. Does anyone have any stories of any delighters that they've experienced recently? Yeah, like think about, has anyone ever been upgraded on Emirates? No? Yes? Okay, Reka has. I mean, imagine that. You're going in, you want to check into your economy seat that you're still quite, satisfied with because it's Emirates, and then you get an upgrade onto business class because they're recognizing you as someone that, travels a lot, or they've recognized you sometimes to see, oh, you might be, you might be ill, or if it's a lady and she might be pregnant, and they give that extra care, and they then upgrade her to business. That's a delighters. That's something that will give you this extra love and care for this business that actually took the time to think about you. And of course, it's not something you can offer all the time, but a lot of airlines do that. On probably every single flight, they'll choose a few people and give them that bit of delightment by upgrading them. Another example could be, let's say you're in a hospital, and instead of just, someone's at the hospital and they're staying there for a couple days, and then you go out there and you find out what their favorite restaurant is, and you go and you bring them a meal from their favorite restaurant without any cost increase or whatnot. Again, a delighters, something that wasn't expected but makes your customer feel really special about what you've done for them. So it's things like that that we need to think about, and you can even take that into products and services, into products as well, and product development as well, when you're thinking about what can we do in terms of how to make that product just a little bit more special for our customers. But the thing to realize is that even with these excitement generators, well, the first thing that we need to know is these excitement generators really help differentiate you from your competition. And you need to also think about what kind of investment is needed to make customers delighted. And this is something that should always be top of mind, because what happens is over time, well, we all know time changes everything, but delighters eventually become performance features. If you're started to offer, for example, free Wi-Fi, if Dubai has free Wi-Fi everywhere you go, that's great. That's a delighter. It's something that's not expected. But if then it becomes standard to have free Wi-Fi everywhere in the world, it eventually falls into your performance features. And then if the Wi-Fi is really good and it works great, and if it doesn't, that's how you sort of measure how good that performance feature is. But eventually that would probably become basic, and how it goes down. Yes, please.
Just in terms of apps, so I don't know, one that came to mind is on the Cream app, for example, it says yellow.
Yeah.
Instead of get me a cab, it says yellow.
Yeah.
That's interesting if you're Arab and if you understand that, and it's a delighters. I didn't expect that the first time.
Yeah.
Is that what you consider, for example, is it's a small, tiny feature, right? And it can never become a performance feature. Are those considered?
Well, that's a little bit different than a feature. It's more of them understanding their customer, so they know that they are targeting at a region of people who say yalla all the time. Whether you are Arab or expat, everyone says yalla here, right? So it's they're basically telling their users, we speak your language. We understand what you're saying. But again, if let's say Uber starts incorporating Yalla and everyone starts putting in Yalla, eventually that may fall into, it may lose its, may lose its greatness, but you'll always remember that Kareem did it first. So that's, again, first mover advantage in terms of when we think about how features come into play. But yeah, definitely, if that feature in itself made you feel more connected to the app, then they definitely can think about that as a delighter, because it made you feel delighted when that happened. Definitely. But yes, one of the things that we need to keep thinking, and like companies like Kareem also and a lot other applications to be thinking, is how can we keep innovating? Because eventually someone's going to copy us, and eventually our customers are going to, this delighter that we've given them is going to become something that they expect all the time, and eventually it might even become basic. So we need to continuously keep thinking about how we can sustain that innovation, or not sustain innovation, but keep innovating and bring new ideas to the table for our products. So always keeping in mind the delighters. And this is something that right now, especially in this region, we see happening a lot in terms of services that we deal with all the time. Does anyone here work in hospitality? Okay, we're all consumers of hospitality. We all go to the different hotels around the region. We all go to nice restaurants here, or even any restaurant. That bit of extra service that you can give to your customers to make them feel special, those are the types of delighters that you need to be thinking about. So that's why we've seen for many years all these different programs that can give you different points based on how customer loyalty and things like that come into play as well. And these are always great ways to think of how you can create delighters, is how you can sort of bring in the loyalty aspect to your customers. But sometimes what happens is that businesses are so focused on those loyal customers that they forget about how can we take the not so loyal customers and make them loyal. And so instead of just focusing all your efforts on delighting your loyal customers, think about the ones that are not loyal to you and how can you make them loyal by delighting them as well. And that's something that I think a lot of businesses in this region tend to forget and tend to, oh, not just this region, I think everywhere as well, tend to let go of, because they're just so focused on those most loyal customers. So when it comes to UX, one of the things that we need, I mean, not one of the things, the thing that I've been talking about all day that we need to think about is, who are we designing for? Know your customers. So for those of you who have startups, do you know your customers? Yes, right? Do you on a regular basis speak to your customers? Have you built personas for those customers? Do you understand their make, what makes them happy, what makes them sad, what makes them, neutral? Who their families are, what their aspirations are. Do you know that bit of detail? When it comes to UX design, that is what we are talking about. Is not just know what customer segment you're aiming. I'm focusing on families with children, expats from Arab region. That's not really knowing your customer. Knowing your customer is getting into the details of that person, their make, where they come from, what types of products that they use, what types of products make them happy. This is knowing your customer, and really trying to build that out will help you connect with them more, will help you build features that will actually delight them more. So that's what we mean about really understanding who you're designing for, and understanding why does it matter, why does the product or service that you're offering matter back to that customer. And you'll only ever know that if you really, really build a strong customer relationship by understanding those different customers of yours. Now, a lot of people will say to UXers, but we have so many different customers, and even in a customer segment, you'll have different types of customers that have different needs and different makes, etc. And we don't want to just focus on just one, because you might miss out on the other types of customers out there. But what we do when we say get to know your customers, and when we say build personas, it's always fictional characters. It's always a generalized conception of this customer itself. So we're not saying it has to actually represent a specific person. It really just needs to represent a generalized stereotype of that person, and that enough can help you have a better understanding of who your customers are, and why what you're building matters to them. What can they do that they couldn't do before? What are you offering that will make them think, you guys are doing something that I couldn't do before? Uber was allowing me to get into a cab or taxi or a car and get to one place or another without having to carry cash anymore. Kareem doing the same thing. What is it that you're allowing them to do, and how does that might be the differentiator of how you actually end up disrupting the market itself. And then also, that's a very important question when you're trying to think back about the value proposition that you're offering with your service or a product that you're building. And this goes back to regular business modeling when you're trying to put together a startup business. I mean, I'm sure for the startups out there, you've gone through canvas modeling, which centers on your value proposition and focuses on your customer segments and your revenue streams and your cost structure and how that all comes back to your value. But UX is actually central to all that, because everything that you do when you try to build a business model, especially when you're canvassing a business model, is that the customer segments are key. They are key to every different aspect of your business model in terms of the value proposition, in terms of the business partners that you would deal with, the revenue streams that you're trying to gain, and even the cost structures that you would have to deal with. Sometimes you'll have different types of customer segments, and those customer segments are actually people who make your business happen. So I was mentoring a startup this past weekend, a startup week in Dubai, for a product that was being built that their customer segments would actually be, they had two different customer segments, one of them being bloggers who would actually then actually gain business out of their business. So they would work with them because it's not just a consumer, but also because they would be sharing some of the revenue profits from the business itself. So sometimes these customer segments are not just consumers, but also partners in themselves. And then you have to think about, when you start thinking about these products that you're developing, which ones are the basic products? Which ones are the must-haves that must be there, that if they're not there, that's it, you're out of the market? Which ones will help drive performance? Which ones do we do really well that helps drive our performance that we need to focus on? And what features that can we bring in that will delight our customers? And then how do all these features fit together? How do all these features make up our product, our service? How do these features then make up our vision, our mission? How do they make up our brand? How do they make up the way we position ourselves within the marketplace itself? All of these do come together. So it's when you think of the user experience design and you're bringing it in together, when you're thinking of user experience design and you're bringing it into your features development, that actually then goes back to play in terms of the brand essence of your organization or business that you're trying to design or develop. So UX is about your users. UX is about users' needs. UX is about the uses, the journeys of those users, the features, and then finally the product. So what happens a lot of the time is that businesses start here. A lot of startups start here, which is okay. I have this great product, this great idea that I want to build, and everyone's gonna love it before ever going through any of these. And then as soon as you start going back into the circle of UX and centering what you're trying to build around that, if you start there, you will end up with something much stronger here. So when we think about our customer segments, who are they? And when we think about their needs, I need, answer that question. I want, answer that question. My goal is, this is a customer's voice. I need better, I need to check into my hotel within 30 seconds. I want to feel like the hotel knows who I am. And my goal is to be in and out really quickly, or whatever that is. Speak with the users and get them to answer those questions. The best way is to go up to them and say, if you were to finish this sentence, how would you say it? What do you want? How do you need it? And get them to finish that thing. And then that way you end up understanding how the customer journey looks and how the customer journey works. And then you start to understand the features needed to satisfy their needs and the product experience design that you would want to build. So we look at, when we think about users and their needs, we're thinking about customer development and user research. So going out there, talking to customers, getting the research out there, you don't always have to just do your own research, of course. There's a lot of market research out there that you would need to consider as well that helps you build those personas that we talked about, those fictional characters too. And then you build and you learn. You build and you learn as you go along. As you develop this product, you're iterating, you're building, you're learning, and you're going back and making changes. And it's a circle that continues, which I'll go through with you in a moment. And then everything that you're doing is coming back and aligning back to your value proposition, the existence of your business or product. And then if you take a look at the customer journey and the features, how do we do that? Well, from a UX perspective, we would go into sketching and prototyping and testing our ideas before you ever go into building user interface, before you ever go into coding. So this is one of the things that, that especially when I've worked with startups in the past and mentoring startups in the past, is a lot of the time they really want to focus on getting a product out there. You know, we need to have an MVP because that's what investors are looking for. That's what will make me feel like my business actually exists. But you don't actually need to go to that level, because if you're already building the product, how are you going to build and learn? How are you going to change it? The first thing that you need to do from a UX perspective is you just sketch it out. Prototype it. It's the easiest way. There are so many prototyping tools out there, free, online. Download them. Start building through prototyping. Start building through sketches. This is what, then take those back and validate those back with your customers. Then take those back and see, do they actually meet the needs? Are those features that you're building into your product actually basic? Are those features that you're building into your product performance enablers? Are they delighters? That's the way to do it in terms of when you're sketching and prototyping. If you're going in and you're actually building the code and building the MVP, which is the next stage, then you're going to have to start making changes at this level, which takes up more time and takes up more money. So this is where you need to be, and a lot of the time investors are looking for this. They're looking for something, just a really strong prototype that has a very strong business model attached to it, that you can showcase clearly that you're meeting a customer need, that you're in the right market, that there's a strong value back to those customers, and that in itself would help you get that investment that you're looking for, if that's what you're looking for. But even if you're not just looking for investments, it helps you and yourself know what you're building before you actually go to build it. So very importantly, and UX is something that we do here, and it's sketching and prototyping. And again, I just want to iterate, user experience design is not user interface design. We are not building something in HTML. We are not coding something. We are not making something actually work that can go out there and well, it can work, but you know, it doesn't need a developer on board. It doesn't even need a designer on board. It just needs thought process. It needs people focused on strategy and customers, and you know, nice pretty sketches, or not even, they don't even need to be pretty, but just boxes and arrows and lines, a prototype. That's all we're talking about, especially when you want to, when you're a startup and you're working in a very agile and lean environment, that you're trying to get something out really fast and iterating really fast. And then eventually you can start turning that prototype into something that's a little bit more pretty and workable, that you can potentially test and measure to ensure that you are coming back to meet that value proposition of yours. Now this in itself, the sketching and prototyping aspect of things, is a whole workshop on its own. So if you guys have any questions around that and how you can do that, if you want to have some ideas about different prototyping tools, just please come see me and I'll be happy to send that information over to you. And then just again, as I was mentioning, I really wanted to just make this point. Initially, when I was thinking about what to talk about today, I wanted this talk to be on lean UX and for startups. But there's a lot of talks. Actually, there's one this evening that's going to be talking about lean startups. So if you're interested, to come out to that. But what we mean about lean is about really building in an agile space. It's about building, it's about when you first go to build, you're making sure that you're considering all the stuff that we talked about in terms of who your customers are and their needs, etc. But you're measuring and you're learning and then you're iterating. It is a step. It's different types of steps that happen on in a environment where you're developing. So it's what we call sprints for those people who work in the lean environment. So you initially start by building, you build, measure, and you learn, and then once you're at the stage of learn, you build, you measure. You learn, you build, you measure. And it continues in that circle until you've reached your MVP that you're trying to build. So this is kind of just a very, very, very high intro to what lean is all about. Of course, there's a lot of different steps and methodologies that you would need to apply with your teams that you have in place to actually get that across. But it's a very interesting it's a very interesting methodology of how a lot of different products are getting built out there. If anyone here is in product development, especially if there's any engineers in the room, you might be really accustomed to that waterfall approach where you go step by step to finally get to your final product, which usually takes a very long time. But with Lean UX and with Lean development and design, it's all about the iterations from sprint to sprint to sprint. And actually, if anyone is actually interested in practicing that, in Abu Dhabi at Flat 6 Labs later this week, there's going to be a Google Launchpad event that will be there, which will actually go through different sprints with with startups that have signed up for that. So that's happening on Wednesday and Thursday at Flat 6 Labs in Abu Dhabi. And then, of course, there's a lot of other sessions here talking about that too. So why is this all important for startups? Well, a lot of startups don't have the capital to burn on massive design up front. They don't have the capital to burn on coding and development. For startups, design can make or break their entry. So when I say design, it's not just the pretty pictures and stuff. It's the actual experience design that you built into your products. And there is a need for best value for investment. And so a lot of startups are trying to think about being more lean in that perspective. So that brings me to the end of this session. And I'd like to just take some time if you have any questions or you want to give examples or talk a bit about your startups, we can use that rest of the time to do so. That's it. Thank you. Yeah.
When you're starting out and let's say you don't have a user experience person on board, what do you think of outsourcing kind of that work in the mindset of, well, if you start with somebody today, in a month, 2 months, 3 months, that contract ends, you might end up with somebody else?
I mean, as a UX consultant myself, I would never say don't do that because that's what I do. But to be honest with you, the first thing that's extremely important when you want to get into any type of business is understanding that strategy that you're trying to build. And even if you do bring in on a UX person to get you going, to help you start building that UX methodology in place, I believe that's okay because that will just get you into the right stance and make sure that you've started with it initially. Now, of course, you probably can't keep a UX person, a UX consultant on board throughout it because they are quite costly. But if you start having that methodology within your organization and make sure that it's accepted throughout from the designers to the developers, you're at least in the right direction. Of course, I highly also recommend to go out there and hire someone who has a belief in UX, maybe a junior UX person. There's not even a lot of, like speaking as a UX designer myself, I didn't go to school to learn how to do UX. There's really very few schools only coming up now with HCI courses and user experience design programs. UX is, it's a practice. It's something that you do through time and you learn, and it's also a passion, it's a belief. So if you have that belief and you have that passion in understanding your users and building for your users and you're practicing that, you can reach that point. So I also highly recommend just getting very enthusiastic juniors on board that have a belief in your product that you're trying to build and get them going in that way. And actually the other thing I wanted to mention, sorry, I did have another slide. There's a lot of really great books out there about understanding the lean startup, but there's also a lot of really great books out there from the O'Reilly Group on lean UX itself. A lot of it is learned through the community. I owe everything that I know initially to having great mentors. When I first started working for an agency in Canada, Nonlinear Creations, but one of the best agencies in Canada if you ask me, and also of course to the community. The UX community out there is small, but it's strong. The Information Architecture Institute that I first started off with, they're based in the States, but they're a worldwide organization, really helped push through all the learnings that I gained when I first started into this industry. And so one of the things that I'm actually doing right now is I head up, as Reka had mentioned, the UX UAE meetup group, which we actually have our meetups here at In5. And it's a great way to bring the community together. And actually when you start talking to a lot of UX people, because we all learn to be UX people in this way, we tend to give back that way too. So it's a matter of just finding people who are passionate about this and talking to them and getting ideas out there. You don't need really to hire me. You can come show me your product and I'll be interested to see how it works and how it doesn't work and have that conversation. And all the other UX colleagues that I know kind of share a similar stance. So if anyone's interested in the UX UI community, I'll just put a plug-in out there. We have a meetup group. You can join the meetup group. We'll be announcing different programs. We also have a one-day event happening in February called World Information Architecture Day, which is an event that will be happening all over the world, all the way from Japan to LA, across the world of different cities that are going to be talking about information architecture, user experience design. We'll have a list of different speakers that will be coming out and in those areas of design thinking and UX, and it would be really great to get you guys to be participate in that, and we'll be sending that information through RecCap because likely we'll be having that, that session here. So that'll be in February, but that information will be coming out soon. Any more questions? Yeah? Okay, thank you guys very much.